All right, hello. My name is Jacqueline Cofield, and I'm going to be talking to you about how arts integration can impact global citizenry, cultivate global citizenry. And so first I wanted to start off with talking about what is global citizenry. I like to think of global citizenry as global consciousness, awareness, knowledge of other cultures, other countries, um, and so I've looked at some different resources, and I'll give you kind of an idea of what some other resources are saying as they define global citizenry. The University of Vermont did a report, and they talked about global citizenry as being an expanded worldview and perspectives. Also, identification with economies, industries, school of thought, vernacular events, an understanding and relation and responsibility to others, society, and environment. Also, an understanding of ethical behavior in personal and professional life. And also, knowledge and skills involved for the responsible citizenship at the local, state, national, and global level. So that's one identification or description of what global citizenry is. Another is by UNESCO, who I've been working with for some years now, and I really like the way that they define in their global programs that they define global citizenry. And they have a whole program in their education department on global citizenry. They do conferences and whatnot on this topic. So you can actually look at the website of UNESCO to learn a little bit more about that. UNESCO defines global citizenry as nurturing respect for all, building a sense of belonging and common humanity, and helping learners become responsible and active global citizens. Okay, so this involves an appreciation for diversity, an understanding of peace and human rights, education, and they believe in a holistic, transformative, value-based approach that is part of a larger commitment. So now that we have a sense that global citizenry really is about being aware, conscious, and feeling responsible to some degree to have an awareness and consciousness about the rest of the world. And I consider myself a global citizen. I have lived in 8 countries and traveled in 60. I'm very interested, so as a person who considers themselves a global citizen, I am very interested in other cultures. I am interested to go to the places, to the other countries, not just to read about them in books, but actually to invest my time and resources to actually go to another country, to learn their language, to learn about their culture and their history. And I find that a couple of things happen. One, that I get a better understanding of where I'm coming from as well as an American citizen, born and raised. I'm getting a better understanding through my international travels in 60 different countries of my own country. And then also vice versa, other people are getting an image of American when they meet me. So there's a sense of being a global ambassador, a cultural ambassador, if you will, when I'm traveling. And also when I've come back to the States, if I meet people from a different country, I automatically develop a bond with them because of the fact that I might be able to say that I have been in their country. I know various things about their history and culture, their arts, and I even might speak their language. I'm also fluent in a few languages. So this has really been a big topic that's really near and dear to my heart. And as an educator, it's something that we're definitely trying to cultivate in our students as we move forward and prepare them for the workforce, the future workforce. It's in a global economy that we're all in. And what does that really mean? And so that's one of the reasons that I do the type of work I do, taking teachers in different countries around the world, because I know that through these teachers, their students are going to learn about those different countries, and they're going to become more interested in those other countries and the people that are coming from those other countries, and also the immigrants who are here in our country. They'll understand them better because they'll have a better understanding where they're coming from. So this is really something that's very interesting, it's very relevant, it's very real, that you can be thinking about in your classrooms when you're going to think about integrating arts in your classroom. A really great benefit and bonus, and I think it's often overlooked, is to think about ways that we can cultivate global citizenry. So we also need to quickly think about what is arts integration, right? So Education Closet has an amazing resource, their website, educationcloset.com, which is how you're looking at this conference. They have done such a great job with defining this term. So I'll go ahead and use the term that is coming from their site: an approach to teaching and learning through which content standards are taught and assessed equitably in and through the arts. And so this is very important. In my discussion with you today, we are going to be really looking at how we can have this topic emerge, global citizenry, how we can have that emerge through the arts, okay? So because I'm assuming that many of you may not even be art teachers. So if you are not an arts teacher, can you still integrate arts and cultivate global citizenry? Absolutely. And so that is what we're going to be looking at, is how through looking at the arts, through exploring the arts, that we can really start to think about the global aspects and getting our students interested in the world, and also some kind of responsibility, a sense of responsibility to be interested in the rest of the world. So, and you can do this in ways that will align with the standards, that naturally will align with the standards, content standards in your school. This will definitely promote deeper learning for your students, making these connections and reinforcing the things that they're already learning in their classes. But one of the important words when you think about art integration is to really, as they say on the website, to think about equity. So we really want to be thinking about that. This approach, arts integration, really is thinking about how two different subjects are taught, separately, equally, and now through looking at them together, we can emerge other thoughts. And so you can have, the students, so this is ideal for students that are already maybe having art classes in your school. And then if you're a history teacher, a social studies teacher, language, economics, math, science, you really can find many different courses that can relate to this concept of cultivating global citizenry. So how can we cultivate global citizenry with arts integration? Well, my 3 points to you are going to be to really think about context. And so my video today, we are going to actually go on site to the New Orleans Museum of Art here I'm in New Orleans right now, Louisiana. And so we're going to be looking at, in the museum, looking at artworks. And we're going to be talking about how these artworks and the approaches, they bring forth global citizenry. So there's three, so if we're going to talk about context, that the context is your access point. And so now, so you have your different subjects, but you're going to find a context for them that align, and you're going to have three different types of context that you can consider. Okay, so I really want you to think about context. One point, a perspective of the context would be for you to think about the artist's life. Looking at an artist's life will tell you so much about their work, and many artists are having international experiences. It's just something that artists are generally really interested in the rest of the world, in travel. Many of them do travel, they feel it's an important thing for them to do. And so all of the artists that we're going to look at today in the museum, they have all traveled. And so their life is very telling of how through their life they cultivated global citizenry in themselves, but also in their communities and through their artwork as part of their legacy, that to this day we're able to, still evaluate their work from a contextual standpoint, looking at their personal life and really get a sense of global citizenry. Another point that you will look at, point of context for them, is artist, culture, and time. So you want to look at the culture, the time period that the artist was alive and working, and their culture. Where were they from? Okay, this is really going to tell a lot about their influences and their impact and what was going. When if I tell you it was 1951, then that's going to tell you that this piece was made at a certain time where various things were going on in the world, not just in the United States but all over the world. And so how are these events that happened in the world based on that time period? How were they influencing the work that was being made by this particular artist? The third point is to look at the context of the artist's actual approach to the art making. So their approaches and their themes of their work. So this case, we're really going to look at the work, and we're going to think about, okay, how did the artist make this work? Okay, what techniques did they use? What materials did they use? What tools did they use to make this artwork? And in many cases, those materials, those techniques, those approaches, whether they be philosophical or literal, those approaches have been influenced many cases, and in this case for all of these artists we're going to look at today, they've all been influenced by their international studies. So in other words, an artist may have gone to another country and learned something. So here we have an American artist named Wayne Higby, who actually spent a lot of time traveling abroad, particularly in China. Higby says all artists' work is autobiographical. And so this is something that really relates to what we're talking about, how when you look at the artist's life, the context of an artist's life, you can really learn a lot about the global experiences that they've had, what has influenced them. And so in this case, Higby spent a lot of time in China, ended up founding a school in China, and is an honorary professor in both China and Switzerland. He was very influenced by the glazing technique called raku glazing technique that he learned while he was in China, and this is very much visible in the style here that you see. He was also very interested in inverting the concept of the inside and the outside of a clay sculpture. He said, what would happen if you put spaghetti in this? It's not really intended to be used as a functional piece of pottery. It's more so, a display of artwork. And lastly, he was also interested in going beyond the physical, looking at the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and intellectual context of works. And this was very much influenced by his time living abroad in China. So to summarize, in this case, this is another example of how you can develop global citizenry and global awareness and appreciation for diversity, for other perspectives, when you're traveling or through studying an artist's work or their personal life. You will learn a lot about the different places in the world that they have been. All right, here you have another sculpture. In this case, it's by artist Peter van der Berg, who was actually living as a Dutch artist who was living in Jakarta as a young man, as a child. And then because of World War II, had to move to Australia, and then eventually came to the United States. When he was living in the United States, he decided to study arts, and he went to Europe and met with Miro and Giacometti, Jean Miro and Giacometti. So he was very influenced by his experience with these artists, and you can see that influence in his sculptures. And so if you're familiar with the works of either of those artists, he's very stylized type of work that's also displaying the frustrations that he had in his life with experiencing World War II and the various things that were going on in the world. So here's another case. We're looking at the personal context of an artist, this case who lived in many countries and who was also influenced by artists from different countries, John Moreau being from Spain, Jacqueline being from Italy, and then that influencing his work. And so the ultimate display ends up being a piece that could not have happened without global influence. So this is another example how this appreciation, the arts help to develop this appreciation for diversity and for global cultures and cross-cultural understanding. So here we have a clay sculpture by Akio Takamori, who was born in Japan and immigrated to the United States, so he's a Japanese-American artist. And Akio was very interested in the depiction of oneself through clay. And so this fits really well into the exhibition here at the museum. Akio said, "We can project ourselves into whatever we like clay to be." Akio did a lot of figurative works in the career, and mostly looking at historical figures, contemporary society, and rural villagers. So you can see in this piece how that is reflected in the work, and the Japanese-American dual identity was being explored through this artwork. And so this is another example of how global citizenry is displayed through artworks, because this is an artist who had two cultures and was expressing identity through the artwork. And so a study of the personal context of this artist will help you to understand not only the Japanese culture from which the artist came from, but also the Japanese-American experience here in the United States. All right, so here we're looking at Bror Anders Wilkström. He's from Sweden, where he studied at the Royal Academy of Art in Sweden. He immigrated to the US, to New Orleans, in 1883, where he became one of the best-known artists doing works that portrayed the Carnival here in New Orleans between the 1880s and 1890s. He also taught in New Orleans at various schools and universities here, and he did landscapes of the Louisiana and New Orleans scenery. So this is another example of how an international artist has immigrated to another country, in this case, United States, and has really become a part of the history and culture of that place, and also cultivating the next generation of artists because he was teaching. So this is part of how we cultivate global citizenry, through becoming more aware and knowledgeable and experienced in other cultures.
Awesome.
So Edgar Degas is a very well-known Impressionist artist from France. Did you know that he lived in Louisiana and had a New Orleans connection? Well, this painting here, he has depicted a portrait of his sister-in-law. Her name is Estelle Maison. And when Degas was born, his father bought a home for his family here in New Orleans because Degas' mother was from a Louisiana family. So he had this connection to Louisiana, and he called himself Fils de Louisiane, which means a son of Louisiana. He really regarded himself closely with Louisiana, and his family, even to this day, there's a museum that has the connection for the Degas family here in Louisiana. So in this case, he was a French artist, a French citizen, but he was also very sentimental because of his connection through his mother and family to Louisiana. So he had an international connection, and that was part of his aspect of global citizenry, is his personal context.